All right, today we are pulling back the curtain on local politics. But we're not talking about votes or polls. Nope, we're following the money. We're going to do a deep dive into the campaign finance reports for the Democratic and Republican Party organizations right here in Dupage County, Illinois, to see who's really building the bigger war chest.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start at the grassroots, looking at the township financials. Then we'll zoom out to see the main countywide party organizations. After that, we'll piece it all together, see what the numbers are really telling us, and finally, we'll talk about why this whole money race actually matters in the first place. So the big question here is pretty simple. Who's winning the local money race? Is it the long-established Republican network, or is it the Democrats, who have been gaining a lot of ground? Well, the answer? It's not as straightforward as you might think. Let's start by digging into the grassroots level. Okay, we're kicking things off at the most local level you can get, the township organizations. These are the real front lines of political organizing. They're the ones doing the door knocking, putting up yard signs, and really trying to get out the vote. So their financial health, it's a fantastic indicator of just how much energy there is on the ground.
First step, let's just look at the combined financials for all the township organizations. This table lays it all out. The total money that came in, which we call receipts, what they spent, and of course, what they had left in the bank at the end of the day. At first glance, things look pretty competitive.
But when we zero in on just the fundraising, the total receipts, a much clearer picture starts to emerge. Republican township organizations as a group outraised their Democratic counterparts by more than double. I mean, look at that. They pulled in over $61,000 compared to the Democrats' roughly $27,000. That's a big difference.
So you have to ask, where did that huge Republican advantage come from? Well, a massive part of it was driven by a single powerhouse, the Bloomingdale Township Republican Central Committee. They were by far the single biggest fundraiser at this level.
Get this, they alone raised over $47,000. To put that into perspective for you, that one Republican group raised more money than all 9 Democratic township organizations combined. That is a seriously impressive fundraising effort at the grassroots level. Now, on the Democratic side, the fundraising was much more spread out. The top performers were the Downers Grove and Lisle Township organizations. They each raised a respectable amount, for sure, but no single group even came close to matching that massive haul we saw from the Bloomingdale GOP. But here's where the story gets a really fascinating twist. Despite being massively outraised, when you look at the combined cash on hand, the money they actually had left in the bank, the Democratic township organizations ended with more. They held a collective $97,000 to the Republicans' $81,000. So the big takeaway here is that Republicans raised more, but Democrats saved more at the local level. Okay, so let's move up a level. We're going from the townships to the main countywide party committees. Think of these as the central hubs that coordinate all the strategy and resources across Dupage. So how do their finances stack up against each other? And here it is, a direct head-to-head comparison at the county level. On the left, you've got the Democratic Party of Dupage County, and on the right, the Dupage County Republican Central Committee. Let's focus right in on that cash on hand. The Democratic Party of Dupage County ended the period with a really healthy bank balance, over $53,000. That is a significant amount of money to have ready to go for any political activity. And in stark contrast, their Republican counterparts ended with just under $10,000 on hand. That's a pretty big gap. So yeah, the takeaway here is pretty unambiguous. While that township fundraising race was complex, at the county level, the main Democratic Party holds a major financial advantage when it comes to cash on hand. So what does all this data really tell us when we put it all together? Well, it's not a simple story of one side just dominating the other. It's more like a tale of different strengths and different strategies at different levels of the political game. Let's just quickly recap the crucial points. First, Republican strength is really concentrated in that grassroots fundraising, especially in powerhouse townships like Bloomingdale. Second, even with that, Democratic townships collectively held on to more cash. And third, the main Democratic county party has a decisive cash-on-hand advantage. The bottom line is, the picture is mixed. It reveals different strengths, giving each party something to feel confident about. It's really easy to get lost in all these numbers, but it's so important to connect them back to the real world. Why should we even care about these party bank accounts? What does this money actually do?
Well, this money is basically the fuel for modern political campaigns. It pays for everything from the party headquarters rent and website hosting to printing literature, organizing volunteers, supporting candidates, and running all those voter outreach programs. A healthy bank account lets a party be more active, more visible, and ultimately more effective in the community. Then that brings us to our final question. On one hand, the GOP has shown it can really activate its grassroots donor base. On the other hand, the Democrats have built up a pretty substantial cash reserve at both the township and the county levels. So looking at all this financial data, who do you think is better positioned to make their case to voters in the next election cycle? That's a question these numbers can't answer alone, but they certainly set the stage for the political battles to come.